Good to have you with us. Aaron Ruby's going to be joining us momentarily here in the John Fredericks Radio Network as we talk a little bit about the pipeline situation and some new material that you might find interesting. In fact, he's on the line now. Joining us now, one of the key spokespeople for Dominion Energy and a person that has been working with me on getting these pipelines through, especially the ACP, the Atlantic Coast Pipeline. We're finally almost ready to make this thing a reality. Aaron, good to have you with us.
Good morning, John. Thanks for having me.
There's been a lot going on. You know, we've been fighting for this pipeline for jobs in Central and Southeast Virginia, the Atlantic Coast Pipeline, Aaron, for such a long time. Give us an update now on where we are.
Well, we're getting closer to the finish line, John, and we appreciate your support and all you've done to educate the public about all the benefits of the project and why it's needed. But we're almost 3 years into the federal permitting process for the project, and we reached a really critical milestone back in July, about a month ago, when we got a favorable final environmental report from the lead federal agency, and that kind of clears the path for final approval this fall. There's a couple of other permits we need on the state and federal level, and we feel pretty confident on those as well. So if all goes according to plan, this fall we will get all the final approvals we need, and we're going to start building the pipeline. It takes about 2 years to build a pipeline like this, so we expect to have the pipeline operating and in service by late 2019.
Okay, that's not that far off in reality. So when do you actually break ground?
Well, so if we get all the approvals that we need, the state and federal approvals that we need this fall, which we fully expect that we will, you don't immediately break ground like the next day. There's a few intermediate steps you've got to take, the most important of which is we've got to be able to demonstrate to each of the agencies that we're going to be able to comply with the number of conditions that they're going to apply on the permit application. And that, can take anywhere from, several weeks to a month or two. But we fully expect we're going to be breaking ground this fall. And the first step in the process is you've got to clear and grade the right of way, basically do all your prep work, your site prep, so that we're ready to begin real pipeline construction in the spring. So that's kind of the timeline that we have now.
So the clearing is in the fall, and then
That's
the spring
right.
is when you actually start to you dig and actually lay the pipeline.
That's right, because it's seasonally restricted. So because
Right.
of migratory birds and other species, you can only clear trees during a certain window of time during the fall and winter, and then once you've finished all that prep work, then you can start excavating the trench, laying the pipe, and restoring the right-of-way. And I think you saw last week the announcement we made. It's a pretty exciting announcement. We're very excited about it, about this really creative, innovative environmental initiative that we're launching with this project, so that once we're done with construction in some of the areas where it's suitable, we're going to revegetate the right-of-way with native grasses and wildflowers that attract pollinator species like butterflies and bees and other pollinator insects. I'm sure you're aware just from watching the news, and a lot of folks are, that we're facing a serious environmental challenge. It's not just in our region or nationally; it's worldwide. We're experiencing a sharp decline in the habitats and the populations of these pollinator species. And we depend on them to produce, up to 2/3 of the fruits and vegetables that we eat every day. And the main contributing factor, the reason why we're seeing such a decline in these population of bees and butterflies and other pollinators is they're losing their habitat. So, pipeline rights of way and utility corridors, they create a great opportunity to create new and vibrant habitats for these species. And so we've had tremendous success on our electric transmission lines. We've created like 43,000 acres of pollinator habitats all across Virginia and North Carolina. And so we're going to expand that program to our pipeline rights of way. And we found about 750 acres along roughly 50 miles of the Atlantic Coast Pipeline right-of-way that we think are suitable for this program. And we just announced it last week, and we're in the process of introducing the program to the landowners and getting them interested and excited about it. And we look forward to seeing it take shape in the months to come.
All right, Dominion Energy now wants to be sure we take care of butterflies and bees so that we can pollinate. Who would be opposed to taking care of butterflies, right? Come on.
I'm not sure there are. I mean, it really is it was sort of under the radar for a while, John, but I think, and we appreciate all of the media attention that is focused on this environmental challenge in the last several years. I think there's growing public awareness about it, and it's not just an environmental challenge that affects wildlife. It affects people.
Right.
Our food production, our crop production depends on having healthy and vibrant pollinator habitats and populations, and as those populations are disappearing, it's causing real problems for our farmers and our food production. So we are excited to do our part. And an environmental challenge this big, John, everyone in our society has to contribute. You've got to have governments taking action. You've got to have non-governmental organizations, nonprofits, and the private sector has to play a big role. And so our company recognizes that. We think that this is a good thing for us to do. We think it's the right thing to do, and we do think that it's going to help to significantly improve our environment. So we're proud to do our part.
Bees and butterflies. I mean, look, Dominion Energy, you guys are doing everything. When you're taking care of bees and butterflies, so you get everything pollinated, and of course you understand how the whole food chain works, right? You got to repollinate things in order to get fruits and vegetables. So I'm glad you guys are doing your part for that. We're with Aaron Ruby. He's the media relations manager and one of the key spokespeople for Dominion Energy. We're talking about this pipeline. Now, for the Atlantic Coast Pipeline, let's get back to this. Mm-hmm. So everything looking good right now. Not a done deal, but moving in the right direction. But let me just ask you this. You know that the minute you start clearing the area, you're going to get protesters there. You're going to get people trying to disrupt it, bring media attention, stand in its way. If that happens, what does Dominion Energy plan to do?
Well, we've obviously done a lot of planning to make sure that we're fully prepared for construction. Not only all of the due diligence you have to do to make sure you can safely build a 600-mile pipeline, in terms of engineering and hiring all of your contractors and your subs and getting your workforce in place. But obviously, security is incredibly important. For our company, the safety of our employees, our contractors, and the communities where we do business, it's paramount for us. Nothing is more important. So we've done a significant amount of planning to make sure that we're doing the work safely, that we are doing it securely. And certainly, if you look at some of the other pipeline projects that have been under construction recently around the country, there's been a lot of protests and disruption, and we're doing everything we can to try to avoid that. And one of the things we've been doing over the last several months is we've been working closely with all of the emergency preparedness personnel in each of the communities where we're going to be building. We've been working with the local sheriff department, the local police, the local fire departments to make sure that everyone is prepared. Everyone
right.
knows when we're going to be doing certain activity in the different areas. That we've got emergency preparedness plans in place, and also working with the state police so
mm-hmm.
that everyone is prepared to make sure that we can do the work safely and with as minimal disruption in the community as possible.
Okay, now you might not be able to comment on this, Aaron Ruby, but Representative from Texas, Republican Lamar Smith, represents the 21st District. Okay, he put out a statement the other day. He said that he's got evidence that some environmental activists who pressure politicians to halt production of natural gas are acting as agents of influence on behalf of the Kremlin and Russian energy interests. This, according to a retired CIA officer's analysis and following the money. And Lamar Smith got his piece published on the Daily Signal and him raising the flags for this. Do you guys have any evidence of this at all? Because it's kind of crazy.
I don't, John. I read the Daily Signal report that you're talking about, and I have no independent, information on this. So I've seen the same report that you've seen. I got to say, if it's true, it's deeply alarming and disturbing. I mean, I don't think it is. I think there's pretty compelling evidence that we've all seen that the Russian government is interfering in our electoral system, and that's deeply troubling on its own. And I don't think it's far-fetched to imagine that one of our biggest geopolitical competitors is also covertly trying to interfere with our industry, so they can gain an economic advantage and a national security advantage over our country. Our nation has the largest reserves of clean-burning natural gas in the world, and we are in direct competition with the Russian government. Mm-hmm. And clearly the Russian government has an interest in undermining our industry, sure, and in the production of our clean-burning fuels, and in undermining the function and the integrity of our infrastructure that transports those fuels. And so I've seen that report. I don't know if it's true, but if it is true, it's certainly alarming, and I think some members of Congress are looking into it, as the article indicates.
Well, this is a story that we're going to be covering because unlike just a private company, I mean, the big Russian oil and gas company, Gazprom, is part of the government. So what's happening here is, if you follow some of this money, Putin's government is trying to stymie these pipelines because it's going to compete directly with their Gazprom company. And so it's in their best interest that these not get built. So when you look at the comment section that's opening, I mean, you follow the money and some of the shell sites they've set up and the bots and whatever, they're actually trying to influence and seed discontent with certain people, like to stop the Mountain Valley Pipeline and things of that nature. And they had a piece under the heading, "No Fracked Gas Pipeline." This is a section on one of their websites that was encouraging people to make negative comment during the comment section. I mean, if there was be one thing, if it was done by a private company that was competing with them, I could see that. But this is a government that is part of this company. And I'm glad that Congressman Lamar Smith has brought this to our attention. I'm going to get him on my show, but it's a pretty unnerving development. Don't you agree?
It is. It is. If it's true, John, it is deeply troubling. I think, over the last 10 years, we've seen a natural gas revolution in our country, and it's not only brought tremendous positive economic impacts to communities all across the country, and it has helped to revitalize our manufacturing sector. It's created tens of thousands of jobs in the oil and gas production industry, and these are a lot of the communities that are really struggling and need it the most. You look at Pennsylvania, Ohio, West Virginia. You've seen a lot of economic growth and development and job opportunities in those areas that wouldn't have occurred if you didn't have the natural gas revolution. That is, we're as a nation, we're in direct competition with the Russians and with the Russian government particularly, because as you say with Gazprom, they generate a significant amount of revenue for their government. But not only has the natural gas revolution given our country enormous economic power, it's also given us geopolitical power, because we are now in control of our own resources, and we're becoming more energy independent, and we're becoming less dependent on foreign governments and for our energy resources. And so obviously, I think it makes sense that the Russian government would want to try to stymie that, would want to try to interfere with the success that we've had with our natural gas industry.
Especially now as we're moving into becoming an energy exporter. For those in my generation that remember the gas lines of the 70s, and you could only buy gas on odd and even numbers, and we remember $5 a gallon not that far back. The thought of one day we'd be actually sending energy out of the country was almost mind-boggling, because, the big thing is we were energy dependent for so long, dependent on OPEC, and when they'd raise prices, it would affect us. Now that's all gone. Obviously, the Russians, I think John McCain, Senator McCain one time said of the Russian government, he said, they're not a government, they're a gasoline station. So they're continuing to undermine us in any way that we can. We're with Aaron Ruby, Media Relations Manager for Dominion Energy, talking about the Atlantic Coast Pipeline, which they could actually start clearing land for this in the fall and break ground in the spring and start laying this pipeline. It's going to mean so many jobs to Virginia, both short and long term. And it's really the detractors to the pipeline. What they don't understand is it has no environmental downside whatsoever. Many of us are standing over pipelines right now in whatever office you're in, or driving, you're going over a pipeline or standing on it. And it's a lot safer to transport natural gas by pipeline than it is by truck or train. There's only 3 ways to get it from point A to point B. And it's going to create jobs in the short term, building the pipeline, and then in the long term by allowing manufacturing companies to come in and move by the pipeline and tap right into the energy. And I tell you one thing, Aaron, that drives me nuts about people that are detracting the pipeline, like Tom Perriello is a perfect example. And he says, well, these pipeline jobs are only temporary jobs. Well, anybody that works in construction is a temporary job. What the hell is he talking about?
Yeah, it's sort of stating the obvious.
It's stupid.
But there are tens of thousands of people in Virginia, and I've met them. I know them, and you've met them too. I know you've had Matt Yonka and other folks, and Justin Meehan and other folks from the labor community in Virginia. There are tens of thousands of hard-working, good and decent people who live in Virginia and have made a career out of building infrastructure projects and other construction projects like the Atlantic Coast Pipeline. If construction jobs were permanent jobs, we would never finish building anything. So at a certain point, you have to finish the construction job and you move on to the next one. And but this for 2 years, this pipeline is going to provide hundreds of millions of dollars in new income for hardworking people all across Virginia. We've estimated that more than 8,000 jobs would be supported by the construction phase of this project. Hundreds of millions of dollars in new income. And these aren't just any kind of jobs, John. These are good-paying, middle-class, highly skilled, highly trained jobs. These folks make $25 an hour, $50 an hour and up. These are welders, they're pipe fitters, they're heavy construction equipment operators. They're good people. They work very hard. They take a tremendous amount of pride in the work that they do. And really, they're the backbone of our economy. These are the people that built our nation. They build our highways. They build our bridges. They build our tunnels, our cities, our power plants, all of the infrastructure that makes our society and our economy the greatest in the world. And, it's really unfortunate to see people diminishing the tremendous work that they do and the huge value that they bring to our economy.
Well, you're absolutely right with that. I've got a question here from Corey in Danville, who says Dominion needs to build more through Halifax County. There's no opposition to the last one, and he says they can lay one right through my backyard. What's the deal there? Halifax.
We certainly welcome the support and the invitation. We're focused right now on building the Atlantic Coast Pipeline. And at the end of the day, the way that we decide where we're going to route pipelines is, where does it need to start? Where's the gas coming from? And then where are the end-use markets? Where are the power plants that need the gas in order to generate electricity? Where are the local distribution companies, the local gas utilities that need the gas so that they can heat people's homes and power local businesses? As you're well aware of, we're building a lateral line off of the Atlantic Coast Pipeline into Hampton Roads. And the reason we're doing that is because the gas supply and the infrastructure in Hampton Roads has been stretched so thin in recent winters that when you've had extremely cold days, the local gas utility has had to shut off service to more than 100 industrial customers for several days at a time, including the U.S. Navy. Mm-hmm. And that means that those companies have to shut down their facilities for days at a time. So if the local gas utility in Hampton Roads is struggling just to keep up with existing demand during peak use periods, like extreme cold winter days, they certainly do not have enough capacity on their pipelines in order to support new economic development, new businesses, new
Right.
manufacturers and industries that want to locate in the region. And ever since we proposed the Atlantic Coast Pipeline and the lateral that's going to come into Hampton Roads, I think if you talk to economic developers in Chesapeake and Suffolk and other areas of Hampton Roads, they'll tell you they have seen a renewed interest in major companies, manufacturers, other new
Right.
industries locating in their region because they now know that they're going to have a dependable supply of natural gas to run their facilities. Without the Atlantic Coast Pipeline, I don't think you're going to see that. I mean, the president of Virginia Natural Gas, Jim Kibler, I think you've had him on your program, he said unequivocally that there just is not enough natural gas infrastructure east of Richmond to support any major new economic development projects. And so if we want to grow the economy, we want to diversify the economy, then we need new gas infrastructure, and that's what the Atlantic Coast Pipeline is.
All right, Aaron, we're out of time. I want to thank Aaron Ruby for being with us, Media Relations Manager for Dominion Energy, talking about the pipeline.